Guys, so in this chapter, we're going to be going over production cost. So basically, just the cost of doing business. And with that, we have to talk about a little bit more about firms and market structures. So a firm is going to be, like we said before, like a business. So it's going to be a producer, the things that are making things. It's an organization that combines the inputs of labor, capital, land, entrepreneurship, in order to produce outputs. So we're taking all the inputs to make the outputs. We talked about private enterprise being that you can own your own business, right? And then production is the process of combining inputs to produce outputs. So when we're talking about production, we're talking about actually making the things, right? So we are talking about all the inputs, the cost of those inputs, and the cost of turning those inputs into outputs. So that is the production process, the whole process of actually making the things. And what we're going to be doing is looking at the cost of making those things. All right. So for a firm, the real question would become, what do they need to produce? How similar are the products going to be to one another? Right. So what is different about your product than a different firm? Is it difficult to start a business? That's really going to play into, do you even want to start a business? So in the state of Texas, it's pretty easy to start a business. Like, you can start it relatively quickly if you wanted to. And then finally, the other question you got to figure out is, how do you want to compete? There's a couple options on what we're meaning by this, but basically, do you want to compete on price? Like, do you want to be that low cost option for employee or for your customers, or do you want to be known as that high quality, high price product? So both have their advantages for sure. So, but in terms of a business, right, you have to consider everything that we're about to cover if you want to go down that route. Okay. So when we talk about just industry structure, we're going to go over these four types of businesses. The first one's going to be perfect competition. That's the one we're going to go over first. We'll then cover monopolies. We're kind of familiar with monopolies, right? Where it's just like one person, one firm is making everything. And then we're going to have a mixture in between those. So monopolistic competition, which is more common in the real world, and then oligopolies are also an option as well. But when it comes to the breakdown of these firms, it's really about the size of them too. In fact, going based off of this survey here, if we looked at the number of employees at a firm, we can see that 79.2% of all firms have anywhere between 0 to 9 employees. So that's a lot of firms that are small businesses, right? Where you have 0 to 9 employees. It's pretty incredible that there's that high, as many firms that over there. So when we're talking about these businesses, we're really talking about kind of a low employed firm here. Very few, only 0.3% of firms are going to have 500 or more employees. Now, they do account for, 49.8% of all paid employees. So not only do they are large, there are not that many firms that are that large, but there are a lot of people that do work at those firms as well. Okay? So it's just a little breakdown of just what's going on in the real world, and how many employees are different firms. So we want to talk about the production process. All right, so start to finish, how do we get that thing out on the shelf? How do we make the output? So the first thing we have to figure out are our explicit and implicit costs. We already talked about revenue being that money that you make when you sell something, revenue, right? So all you're going to do is just price times quantity, right? If you sold 10 t-shirts and you sold them for $5, that's $50. So right there, that is your total revenue. But we're going to get a little bit more specific here. And we're going to talk about explicit and implicit cost. So explicit cost is going to be those out-of-pocket costs or actual payments. The way I like to think about it is like, this is exactly what you're spending on something, right? So basically, if you had to make a t-shirt, and you bought all the ingredients and all the materials to make a t-shirt, and it cost you $10 to buy all the materials, that was the exact cost to buy all the materials to make the t-shirt. So that's the explicit cost. Other examples will be wage, rent, cost of materials. All right, those things are going to be the explicit cost, the cost that you are exactly like it's coming out of your pocket in order to pay for it. Explicit cost. Okay, so if we were looking at a firm that was basically trying to decide what to make, and if it has to do with production, right? So the cost of gas to drive to go get the materials, right? The cost of the rent for the space, the wages you needed, the profits. Well, not the profits. The the rent payments that you have to pay for machines, things like that, or maybe you have to rent some land, or the cost of ingredients. All of those things, that's going to be the explicit cost. Anything that has to do with the cost of doing something. Implicit costs are going to be a little bit tricky. So implicit costs are going to be the opportunity cost of using the resources that the firm already owns. So when we're talking about implicit costs, we are talking about the opportunity cost. Opportunity cost, remember, is what you're giving up. You're giving up something in order to make the output. So this really could be depreciation on your machines, right? So, by you actually using your machines, you are going to be having that depreciation, which is kind of not an exact cost of doing business, where we kind of assume what that depreciation is. So it's implicit cost. Something else would be the goods or materials or the resources that an owner contributes. So what is the owner contributing to this business? Like, what are they, like, if, for instance, maybe they're foregoing some sort of salary at another place. Like if you quit your job at a bank to go work on your own business, right? You're literally quitting that job, right, to go over here. So you are giving up that job over there to work over here. So in that case, right, you are having an opportunity cost here. So we need to count that, and that's going to be implicit cost. Something else would be maybe you're using your home space for retail space. So basically you are giving up some of your space at home in order to use it for your business. So again, that's something that we have to consider when we're talking about implicit costs. Now, anything that deals with the production is explicit. Anything that's opportunity cost or anything that's going to be extra that it's not related directly to the cost of production, but it still should be considered, it's going to be implicit cost. And once we have the explicit and the implicit cost, we can then go into what is accounting profit and economic profit. So accounting profit, that is actually going to be what we think of when we're trying to figure out profit. Okay, you make this much money, it costs you this much, what's your profit? That's exactly what accounting profit is. It is taking the total revenue minus the explicit cost. Okay, that's all it's doing. So if you made 10 shirts and each one was $5, your total revenue is $50. Okay, all I did was 10 times 5, so $50. And then if each t-shirt cost you 3, so $3 cost, and again, how many t-shirts I make? 10. So this will be 30. Okay, so this was the cost of materials. This was the cost of labor. All of these things, that is the explicit cost that we have to pay for these t-shirts. So what is my accounting profit? Accounting profit is total revenue minus the explicit cost. So that'll be 50 minus 30, which equals 20. Okay, so that's how accounting profit is. It's just straightforward, right? If I gave you the revenue and I gave you the cost, you could figure that out. Economic profit score is going to be a little bit interesting because we are dealing with economics, so we have to consider all of the costs that we are having. So not only do you have to pay the cost of making it, you also have the cost of whatever you're giving up. So we will be considering both things. Okay, so economic profit does include explicit and implicit cost. So economic profit is going to be total revenue minus total cost. So when I say total cost, I'm talking about everything that you're paying to make it and everything you're giving up to make it. Both. It has to be both for total cost. Okay? So for this one, this example here, yes, you are making $20 profit on the t-shirts. However, in order to make the t-shirts, right, maybe you had to give up another 2 hours of work in order to do this. Okay, so you had to take off 2 hours, and let's say you make $30 per hour at other job. So because you make $30 at $30 an hour at your other job, and it took you 2 hours to make and sell the shirts, okay, what'd you have to give up? You gave up $60. Okay, so total implicit cost would be $60. So we already know the explicit is 30, and then we just calculated the implicit cost, which is 60. So again, total revenue, how much money you're making from it. Explicit cost is the cost of making it, and then implicit cost is what you're giving up in order to make it. So that's going to be 30 and 60, so that's going to be 90. So your total cost is 90. So therefore, when you're calculating the economic profit, it'll be 50 minus 90, and this will be negative 40. And that's how we calculate economic profit. Now, beforehand on accounting profit, we were looking at that and we're like, oh, 20, nice, right? We are making money. But when it comes to economic profit, we can figure out the true profit that we're making because we're considering all of the cost. Okay, we are considering the explicit and the implicit. So let's do another example here. So the first thing we have to do is calculate the cost. So let's say this person, they wanted to start their own business. So what do they need? They need an office, maybe they need a law clerk, somebody there as an employee. So right there, we need to pay the money for their office and we need to pay their salary. So $85,000 is your cost. And then what we'll do is we have our revenues that we're making from this business. So $200,000. So right there, $115,000. That's great, right? We're making money. We're making accounting profit. But let's go a step further, right? Because we are forgetting something, right? We are not considering the implicit cost. So let's say in order for Erin here to do her own law practice, she needs to quit her current job, and where she was earning a salary of $125,000. So this would be an implicit cost of owning her own business, right? Because she has the cost of actually doing it, but she does have to give up her job over here, and that's $125,000. So economic profits work like this: 200,000 minus the cost of doing it, which is 85, minus the implicit cost, which is $125,000. So if you did the math there, then you end up with negative $10,000 per year. So you went from $115,000, like, oh, that's good money right there, to negative $10,000 because of the implicit cost. Okay, so based off of this information, okay, like if you were to look at this business right here, on paper, it looks good, right? It's like, okay, we're making $115,000. And then when you look at the economic profit, you see this is negative $10,000 a year. So what should happen here? What should Erin do? Erin might have to consider doing something else. Okay? If nothing changes with her current business, right, in terms of revenue or her cost, right? If nothing changes here, she's better off doing her going back to her current job. Like, she's better off doing that because she was making more money doing that than making the negative $10,000 economic profit. So that's what that number really tells you, is like, basically, if it's negative, that means that you're, losing money by doing something. And so you're probably better off doing something else. So in this situation, even though the accounting profit looks good, we might have to consider the economic profit. Maybe that's going to change our decision to do something. So in the next video, we'll discuss the different cost, or we'll talk about the production function. Okay, I'll see you there. Bye.